Um, I'm getting a lot of, what I've been talking about more political things recently and not so much having to do with my writing and my paraplegia issues and things like that. And it's been getting kind of some interesting responses, from people that disagree with me and people that agree with me. The ones who disagree with me, thank you for listening first and watching. Hopefully you're learning, and not just simply um, going on with trying to say, well, a lot of the comments I get don't seem to be well thought out. They'll disagree with me, but then not give the logic, or reasoning or proof of the things that they're saying. And me, on the other hand, I'm perfectly willing to talk about these things and give the proof, tell you where I'm getting my ideas from. So so for you MAGA people that are watching, if in fact you're a MAGA, I don't know that you are. I'm making assumptions, like you're making assumptions about me and my political feelings. Uh, but for MAGA, maybe I can learn some things from you. So your comments, you can address some of the things I'm going to talk about today. And first of all, with MAGA, that hat, that is the ugliest looking frickin' hat I've ever seen. It's so big, and it's big. It's big like the way Trump is big. It's just a big, overweight. That hat looks overweight. You've seen me in a lot of my videos. I wear hats, and never do they have such a broad, wide, high look on them. Those just look. It's an incredibly dumb looking hat. But I do wish I would have invested in some of the places that are making money off of that. Those people selling that hat are making tons of money for a very cheap, ugly product. Um, it's just bad. Um, and to wear it with a suit, and Trump wears, I used to wear a suit, in my job. My job, I wore a suit every day, until they started relaxing that. And, I never would have worn a hat with my suit. It just, hats with a suit look stupid. It doesn't look right at all. But anyway, coming back to the "Make America Great" thing again. Um, I guess I'm wondering specifically what America is that you're trying to restore us to. Is it the one where we were split slave and non-slave states? Is it the one where women stayed at home and couldn't vote? Is it the one where we were taking over land by indigenous Americans? And you know what? They don't even like to be called indigenous Americans. They're Native Americans. They were here first. They were the natives that were here when we white people showed up out of the blue and just started we just started taking their land, and then the British actually had a proclamation of 1763 where they said that a bunch of the land was historically for Native Americans and it's for them. And but then they found gold on that land, and when Andrew Jackson was president, so he turns around and and had the Indian Removal Act of 1830, and just started removing the Indians, they were called at the time. If I call them Indians instead of indigenous, they don't like being called indigenous Americans, and if I just like to use less syllables sometimes. If it seems cruel and bad, I apologize for that. But anyway, when they discovered that land was valuable, they kicked them out, and it was their land. They didn't buy the land from them. They actually just removed them from it. They did it in such a horrible way. I mean, they did it with, the Trail of Tears, where 100,000 Americans, Native Americans, were removed from their land at gunpoint and forced to walk 5,000 miles away across 7 states. And of the 100,000 of them, about 15,000 of them died during the journey because it was so bad of a journey. Is that the great America? Is that the Make America Great that you're wanting again? And then the other thing is, I want to talk about immigration. And in America, first of all, the United States is not America. The United States is the United States. Canada is America. Mexico is America. Argentina is America. They're all America. America, is North, South, and Central America. is all of America. So, United States, we just claim onto it and say, well, we're America. Nobody else is. It's just us. It's like, okay, maybe that's then rename the Gulf of America. Name the Gulf of Mexico as Gulf of America. I guess that's okay because technically, they're Americans too. It's dumb, and it's a what I've got my wait, I've got to put a hat on. There, my Gulf of Mexico hat. Now, notice this hat is not all big, wide, and scary and weird looking, like the MAGA hat that goes around. Anyway, I would want to actually talk about something else as well. When we're talking about immigrants, uh, Mexicans were here first. This was their land before it was our land. They were the first people to arrive in America. Were an ancestral group of people from Siberians and East Asia that went through eastern Russia into Alaska on something called the Beringia, which is submerged now. You can't walk across it now, but they could walk across it at the time. And that was like 25,000 years ago. They came over from Asia into America, and then they traveled south, and they went all the way down into South America. So this was land that was owned by them first. We white people who came over from um, from Europe, in the 1600s. They were here for thousands of years before we were here. And I'm saying we, I mean, my grandfather came over from Scotland. So, I don't have a long history. My family didn't have a long history on my father's side. My mother's side, I don't know as well on that. So anyway, we just took their land from them. In fact, in 1862, Americans could apply for Western land owned by Mexicans for farming on it, and we just simply took land that was owned by the Mexicans at that time. And in the Great Depression, the United States deported 2 million Mexicans, half of whom were United States citizens. They're just deported. No other reason. They're just kicked out of here. Then in 1848, the United States annexed, California, parts of California, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico. We just annexed it. We took it over, and all of the Mexicans that were living there were actually allowed to be made into. They're actually allowed to be United States citizens at that point. But we just took their land. We just took it. And just I don't know. It's just amazing to me. That they were here first, and then we talk about how they're not good for us, and and I'll give you an example of how Latinos are good for us. In small business, for example, from 2007 to 2012, they were responsible for $1.3 trillion, which was like 86% of the small business growth during that amount of time. So they were very good at running businesses and helping us and making this a more profitable country, for everybody, on things. So then there are the lies, that the right says, in order to try to make them look bad, to their people who follow them who don't really know history or anything like that. Like they claim that undocumented immigrants can vote. They can't vote. They never were able to vote. They can't vote. They're not allowed to vote. And then they go, well, then they get all this money. They get Social Security. No, they don't get Social Security. In fact, they have to, if they're working with a legitimate company, they actually have to pay into the Social Security Trust Fund, but they're ineligible for Social Security. So they're actually contributing to something that they don't even benefit from on anything like that. And then they talk about how they go into healthcare and just go into emergency, then they have to be treated, and how much health care is being spent on undocumented Americans. And they reported by the Kaiser Family Foundation that in 2023, out of the $860 billion in Medicaid, only $3.8 billion went to undocumented immigrants. Meanwhile, the same undocumented immigrants found by the Nonpartisan Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy showed that they paid $96 billion in U.S. taxes in 2022 alone. So they got $3 billion in medical help, but they paid $96 billion in the United States taxes. How does that hurt us? I'm not seeing it. The math is not there. I'm in accounting, so I know math, and I know that getting 96 billion is way worth it if you're only paying 3 billion. You're keeping a $93 billion difference on that. So the right keeps on trying to find other ways to make them look evil. So they go into the whole thing about drugs and fentanyl. Fight drugs. I completely 1,000% agree with that. I've never even tried. I don't do drugs. I've never even tried pot. My roommate in college, tried to get me to smoke pot all the time. Tried tricking me into it a couple of times as well. He made some brownies one time and snuck some into there, and I figured it out and didn't do it because I'm against drugs. So fine, fight the drugs. I'm totally 100% for that. But most of the people coming up here are coming up to escape fascism. I had trouble with that one. And they're just trying to escape horrible living conditions that they're in. For the great America that United States, that we have here. They see that they want it. They want something good. And they want to work. And they want to earn things, and they want to be part of us, and they want to they want to pay taxes. They want to they want to contribute. That's what they want. They're not up here to do drugs, or to give us drugs, or it's just, it's and another thing that people tend to ignore, is how rich people gladly hire undocumented people. They gladly will do it. Trump did it too. Trump had all kinds of people from undocumented immigrants, that he would hire them on, and he said he would do it because, well, they're not taking American jobs because they're only seasonal jobs. Hypocrisy. Can you just stop it? Stop with the whole hypocrisy stuff. The rich did that when they created slavery here, in the 1600s. They actually went and they got people, imprisoned them, brought them over here from their country, from the country they lived in, and they owned them. They owned them. They sold them. They owned them. They bought them, and they made them work for free. And we did that for 300 years. Is that the great America? Is that the make America great you want to go back to? Slavery? I think America can be great. I'm totally an American, United States citizen, an American, and I think that we need to respect Mexico. We need to respect undocumented Americans, or undocumented people coming up here. We need to give them opportunity. We need to create, laws to be able to allow them to become citizens and be part of our community. I mean, we are a nation of immigrants. My father came over, or my grandfather came from Scotland. People all over, their families came from Ireland, or they came from France, or they came from, Africa, and people coming over from Asian countries and things, because they see this as being a great melting pot. It was called the melting pot. That's why we have the Statue of Liberty. It's just bring us here. That's what we're meant to be. We're meant to be that country. Where we have white people and black people and in between. People all different nationalities, all people that know different languages, people that have different cultures. I mean, when you go in and you eat other, food from other countries, it's just awesome, to do it, and to learn other languages. Yo hablo español un poco solamente. It's just, yeah, I just learn these things here, and learn to love each other, instead of making them out to be demons and making them out to be evil and cruel, and then treating them like fascists, sending ICE agents after them, putting, separating children from their parents, deporting people without due process, doing all those things. It's just wrong. We need to stop doing that. So I want to make America great, but not again, not the way it was. I want to make it great the way it could be. That's what we need. So make America great, please. All right, goodbye. Thanks for watching and listening. And give me some comments if you have any comments, and try to be not insulting about them. If you disagree with me, tell me why you disagree and how you disagree. But don't insult and call me libtard and stuff like that. Most of you, I like to have a battle of wits with you, but you're only half prepared. And I'd be better at insults than you because I write comedy and stuff like that. So that's what I do. So don't get in a war with me on that because I'm probably going to beat you. So anyway, thank you everyone for listening and take care.